doesn't seem to matter what business you're in the business of sales. If you have a product or service or even just an idea, we need to be able to sell other people on that. Some people have lots of negative associations to sales, and some people even have negative associations to marketing, seeing it as pure manipulation. But whenever I have talked about influence and persuasion on this show, I've always aimed to do that within an ethical framework or been very clear about where stuff potentially could be outside of those kinds of frameworks. My guest today is Dr. Thomas Trautmann, and he is an expert in AI and neuroscience, neuromarketing. Dr. Trautmann sat down and talked with me about ethical persuasion and influence in sales and marketing. It's a really fascinating conversation with some great insights, and undoubtedly you may want to go and check out more of his work after the show. I will give you all the links and everything you need to check out Dr. Trautmann will be in the show notes. I will also provide you a free summary of the conversation that you can download from the show notes as well, if you would like to keep that with you, with all the key points and actionable content from this episode. Right now, welcome to Present Influence, the show for professional communicators who want to impact, influence, and inspire. My name's John Ball, and I'm your guide on this journey to mastery-level communication skills. One of the reasons I'm very happy to talk to you today is because I know that you work in the area of neuromarketing, and I think it's something that people have probably heard about, and maybe a bit like me, are like, what is that exactly? So could you tell us a little bit about what neuromarketing is?
Yeah, absolutely. Neuromarketing is in fact the implementation of brain science inside marketing and sales. And I went one step further. I created ethical persuasion because neuromarketing is very focused towards the business. And don't get me wrong, it's working extremely well. It brings you to digit growth easily. That in neuromarketing, even though it's targeting the human brain, there is a lack of humanity. No, when I was teaching neuromarketing to employees from companies, they were learning a lot on how to improve the company, but they didn't get anything for themselves. So my desire was to add humanity to neuromarketing. That's why I created ethical persuasion, which is in fact something where you get first something for you that you can then implement with the same growth that neuromarketing offers. But at least you have something that you can use in your everyday life.
I like that you bring in ethical persuasion into this, and it's one of the reasons I think I really liked what you talk about and how you were how would I best say this? How you were describing what you do. That I've talked about ethical persuasion on this show since the very first episode back in 2019. Not on every episode, but it's been a common theme throughout. And for me, that's been the whole thing of I've learned all sorts of tools of influence and persuasion over the years, and I've learned even more since. And Robert Cialdini talks about this in his books on influence. So these tools of influence are just tools, and they can be used for good or bad, but we want to teach them within an ethical framework because that's how they should be applied. Even if you go back to the time of Plato and Aristotle, like Aristotle thought that no one could abuse this stuff, and Plato, no, I think they pretty much can. And let's hope that they don't. That we teach within an ethical framework. Why did that become so important to you?
Because in fact, when you ethical persuasion, my system is called the ethical persuader. So it's a little gameplay because a persuader in English slang, it's a gun I put on your head to get something from you. So the ethical persuader, it makes that tool ethical because the ethical persuader system is all about you getting from the people the decisions you want, why they make the decision they need. And that's only possible if you target the part of the brain that's running the decision process. So you mentioned Robert Cialdini and the 6 rules of influence. And you can take many of the rules like urgency or scarcity, for example, that have been abused over the time. Some air travel companies, well known for it's the last seat for £50 or €50 or $50, and you come 3 days later and the next seat is at 48. We all know that. Or it's those are the 2 last phones left by now, and 1 month later they have 1,000 on the shelf again. That's abusing those things. So the brain will default to make a decision because that's how our brain is configured. And that's the beauty of ethical persuasion, is that if you keep doing it as it has been done before, you create, of course, sales, fast sales, but you don't create recurring sales. And with ethical persuasion, in fact, you increase your chance up to 70% to create recurring business. It's well known. Dan Kennedy in marketing says a buyer is a buyer. It's easier to sell to someone who already bought from you than to always try to run after new clients. You need new clients. Don't get me wrong. You need new clients. But after that, once they become your client, that's where you can start to raise the price of the ticket that you are selling. So that's the whole idea.
Would you say then it's making the realization in sales that the long-term value of a relationship and a customer is worth more than just one sale where they're not going to trust you again afterwards?
Absolutely. It's all about, my brand now is called Make Me Great. It's not make me great. It's what your clients are saying. It's what the brain of your clients is shouting at you, is make me great. Think about me. Work on me. I don't want to hear about your products, your services, your sales, your brand. I want you to make me great. And that's when you elevate your clients. In fact, you elevate your success because that brain is going to fall in love with you. It's going to want to follow you. It's going to be part of what I call the tribe, your tribe. The human species is a tribal species. We cannot live on our own. We belong to many tribes, family, church, sports club, company, the division inside of the company, and so on and so forth. And when you belong to a tribe, you expect a lot from the tribe leader.
Yeah. And from one perspective, then it almost takes away, regardless of your own personal ethics, being ethical in this way is actually better for business and better for your profits and results. But hopefully maybe also helps people feel a bit more virtuous, that they're not just scamming or trying to rip people off.
Yeah. When you are, as you said, scamming or you're putting pressure on people like the famous old encyclopedia seller or vacuum cleaner seller who put the foot inside of the door to get in the house and make his demo. You always have something nagging in the back of your mind, except if you are a completely unethical person, which is not, I guess, the case of your audience and of most people. So when you do it ethical, you feel great because in fact, you go back to being a human being, get results by being who you are, by enjoying being yourself, by enjoying being with other people. I always love it. I have a client who each time I travel asks me, Thomas, do you have a new airport story? This is very funny. For the last couple of times I went to the airport, once, if I may give a few examples, once, the safety queues for everyone who travels through an airport, safety queues are the worst nightmare you can get because it lasts ages. You have to unpack everything, etc., etc.
Yeah.
And I arrived at the airport close to where I live in France, and there was a sign with an acronym. And I've seen that acronym quite a few times, but I had no idea what it means. So to the poor guy who was standing there all day and driving us from one queue to the other one, I just went to him and asked him, what is that about? What does it mean? And so somehow I pay attention to him. It wasn't about me getting as fast as possible through that. It was me having a human relationship and asking a question, paying attention to his brain somehow. So he didn't know it, but as he appreciated me paying attention to him, I was moving ahead away from him and said, sir, please come back. I would like you to go through this queue, which is a fast track queue. So I ended up being the only one. And the safety agent who was there, we asked her the question. So she also gets some interest from two people and she took special care of me. And the other day I was at the Starbucks at the airport and I was very nice with the guys. Usually the restaurant was there and so on. So I had made some jokes and so on. That's my way to be because I do ethical persuasion, right? And instead of having a coffee, I got a huge cappuccino and a huge iced coffee. I told the poor guy, I'm not going to be able to have everything. He says, no problem. It's for the pleasure. So you create very different relationships.
Yeah. The reciprocity kicks in as well, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. I love that. What's not in your head? What is not ethical when it comes to persuasion then, other than like the fake scarcity and things like that? Are there particular techniques that you think would never do that or would never do them in a particular way?
They're hammering on people, insisting. Because then the brain in front of you will purchase from you just to get rid of you. The brain makes decisions on the spot. So the audience has to understand that the decision maker in the brain, or the part of the brain running the decisions, has no clue about the future. It's in the present. In fact, in a 7 seconds window. So you have to get the decision in that time frame. And when it makes a decision, it needs to feel a gain at the moment the decision is made. In fact, there is even one guy or some guys who made the calculation. The gain the brain needs to feel has to be 2.3 times higher than the cost of making the decision.
Okay.
So if I summarize it, I'm selling you something for 100 euros or dollars. Your brain has to immediately get that it's worth at least 230 euros or so. So you have to get there. But if I'm hammering on you all the time, the gain is getting rid of you. You know, that's worth more than the price of what you are selling to me. But I will have defaulted to a decision that's not helping me. That's not helping my brain. So then you are on the list of the people I hate. We all know that. All the tele-sales people, even if someone is good on the phone, we hate them. We play with them, we hang up. So because they all use the same system all the time. And it's boring after a while.
No, when I've done sales myself and been in a sales setting and closing team, the ethical part of it is so important because there's ultimately no point in getting people who really don't want this onto a closing call where you could pressure them into a close. The closer is there to try and seal the deal, but shouldn't be there to hammer them and put pressure on to get something you don't want, because a day or several days later, they're like, I didn't want this. Now we're going to complain, get a refund, kick up a stink, whatever. It's more trouble than it's worth. You want people to get what they really want. So I don't understand, to some degree, unethical sales if you want to have longevity in your business.
And the problem is people have been trained that it's not their fault. It's they have been trained to be rational. And 97% of people still think we make rational decisions because we are that superior species on Earth. We adapted the Earth to us and so on. But we still, if people have to understand that the part of the brain making the decisions is called the primal brain. It's the oldest part of our brain. It's a survival tool. And it stopped evolving something like 100,000 to 50,000 years ago. So it's running processes that were making a lot of sense when we were living in caves, running around naked in the jungle or wherever and trying to kill animals with stones. Makes a lot of sense, except that we are now in the 21st century. And yeah, maybe those processes should have changed. They haven't. So we still need to address that part of the brain, and that part of the brain is a survival tool, and as such, is only interested in the survival of one and only one person on Earth, myself. That's why you have to make me red. So if you keep being rational, you're trying to get the decision from the rational part of the brain. So the decision maker is super frustrated. And by the way, this has been demonstrated scientifically that the primal brain is the decision maker. There is even a guy, Daniel Kahneman, who got a Nobel Prize on his research in 2011 on that thing. If you keep being rational, but as I always say, rational selling equals a loss of resources. You kill your resources because you will spend a lot of time hammering on them. You will have to give discounts, longer test trials, blah, 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 or more stuff together. All people listening who do that will say, oh yeah, sure. Yeah, that's why I have to give a rebate. That's why I have to lower my prices. You should never lower your price. You should find what is driving the decision. And maybe setting them up on something that targets more the decision or down is a solution, not killing your margin.
Yeah. I think that's where the relationship bit is so important, right? Is if you have something that looks really good on paper, like all the benefits are there, all the value is there for you, but you have a bad feeling about the person or the overall thing, you're probably not going to go with it based on that feeling, because the gut kicks in. I know we can override our gut sometimes, but we often end up regretting it. But usually the bad feeling is, I think, there. People call it intuition, but I think we do pick up on stuff unconsciously that causes that to happen. I don't just think it is like some sort of magical sense that we have, rather than it's all the unconscious or the low level things that we've picked up on that have maybe damaged that trust.
Oh yeah, there are a lot of things. If just for the fun, how do you know how long it takes a brain who meets you for the first time to decide if it's going to like you or hate you? It takes
No idea.
0.3 seconds.
No way.
You come through the door, it will say, I dislike John or I like John. I may want
So
to talk with
it's
him or not.
that quick.
That quick. And because we treat visual signals faster than audio, on the phone, you have 4 seconds to make a good first impression. So maybe it's better to be on the phone. Our brain loves visual. We are body language readers, physiological signal readers, because that's how the primal brain communicates mostly.
And it makes sense. Our brains are still looking for dangers and we tend to still focus on the more negative aspects, and those things will flag up a lot quicker to us. What part does the brain then go on to play with, the ethical persuasion if it's mostly an emotional thing? Is it, how do we put the ethical part into our emotional decision making?
You need emotions to make decisions. And a lot of communication agencies get it very wrong because they haven't read Antonio Damasio, which read a fundamental book in 1995, which is Descartes' Error. Because most think, if I get an emotion, they're going to make a decision. Make him happy, he's going to decide. I make her sad, she's going to decide. Well, in fact, no. You have to create an emotional variation. So in those 7 seconds, you have to take them from one emotional state to the next one. That's variation because the primal brain runs on contrast. It needs contrast. Your brain is lying to you. For example, when you get into a freshly painted room, you get in, smells like fresh paint. After 5 minutes, you cannot smell the fresh paint anymore. The paint is still there. The molecules are still there. But as there is no contrast, because the brain has such a limited calculation power, if I want to compare it to a computer, it just discards information which is not contrasted because it's useless for the brain. It's the same thing when it comes to emotion. If you only drive me the same emotion, I couldn't care less. If you create that emotional variation, then something happens. And you can create it once you know what triggers the decision.
Yeah. And that's a critical element for all levels of communication, one that comes up a lot working with professional speakers, of this vocal variety, emotional variation in how you talk and what you talk about. If everything's all at one level, as you say, we switch off to it and we actually get bored surprisingly quick, I think, which isn't good. So we'll try and keep the variety going on the podcast so people keep listening to us. But let me ask you, who are the kind of people that you've generally worked with and what kind of benefits have they seen from employing these ethical persuasion systems?
So I work with entrepreneurs, business owners, CXOs, and what they see is, first of all, their relationships are changing and the effect on their business is crazy. Just a very simple example, I was coaching a team of salespeople for one company, and implementing ethical persuasion requires an effort. It's very easy to understand, but it's a 180 degrees shift in your thinking and way to talk, sell to people. But that guy, it took him 2 months to start to implement the tools that I'm teaching. One of them being what I call silent listening and paying attention to the other. And he managed to do it during one meeting. And he says, Thomas is absolutely crazy. I haven't spoken about my services, my products, our company, myself. I listened to them. I paid attention to what triggers the decision process. And at the end of the meeting, they said, you know what? We are going to work with you because you care. Boom.
Yeah. People know that you're listening to them and you understand them. And you may have come across Chris Voss's stuff with Never Split the Difference, where he talks about tactical empathy. It's like you really listen, but you also repeat back some stuff and say, okay, it sounds like you're saying this. It seems like you feel this way, so that people really get that sense. Is that something that you would bring in as well as one of the tools?
But that's something that you can use because it just shows that you are listening. I call it silent listening because a lot of time you are taught, listen to what people say. But it's very funny when you listen to what someone says, in your brain, it goes, oh yeah, I need to talk about that. And then I will have to talk about this. And then you no more listen because you are thinking about what you want to tell. While the other person doesn't care about what you want to tell. So silent listening, and it's a tough one. It's just shut up. Up there, be quiet.
The hardest thing.
It's super complex. And very often people ask me, Thomas, give me a simple trick I can implement right now. I always say, use the you language. When you write an email, when you pick up the phone with someone who don't really know, with whom you don't have a very advanced relationship, you have to put everything in you. John, you are currently having pleasure doing this podcast, and you are learning something about ethical persuasion, and you will get this and you will get that. Usually what you say, hey, John, I'm happy to be on your podcast because I'm going to tell you about ethical persuasion. You know, it's the same message. Just one, I'm talking about myself because, of course, my little brain is focused on me while your brain is focused on you. And it's very difficult to speak with the you language. I can tell you, it sounds super easy, but it's so difficult because we are, every one of us, even Mother Teresa, we are all super self-centered animals.
Yeah, I'm very well aware of doing that when I'm writing copy, particularly marketing copy, but also when I'm writing talks and presentations. That is very important to have that language. It's essential to have those in the abstracts for things where you're saying that brokers are going to be doing. That's kind of a form of marketing as well. I just had a question about the silent listening, because I really like that thing. And whether there's any element of that which is in a sales meeting or a sales call, the person has mostly made the decision. And so it's partly your job as the sales rep or closer to not talk them out of it. So I can see why maybe being silent is like people do actually talk themselves more into what it is that they already want, that they've come on the call for, because they're probably not going to show up for a call or a meeting otherwise if they're not already interested.
Yeah, that's true. But then you still have to persuade them.
Yeah.
They may be interested, but they have made the decision to talk to you, but they haven't made the decision to buy from you.
They're not
to
over the
go
line.
further with you. It's like when you are talking about speaking events and so on. The only objective you should have when you are speaking is to get the decision from them to listen to you. And then don't get them bored to death. But firstly, you want them to listen.
Yeah.
And so it's again, in fact, people have to understand that everything we do in our life, in our day, is persuasion. And some people will call it selling because selling has a very bad reputation because of all those past sales techniques that were used and still some that are used. So people are even ashamed to sell that they are a salesperson. But I'm sorry, when you want to persuade your husband or wife to go to a specific restaurant, you are selling her or him on that. Our kids are selling us all the time. And they are very bad salespeople, but they are super efficient because they are going to hammer.
Yeah.
Because they know that what drives your decision is to be left alone. So they use that technique because they know it's going to work. They trigger your decision by removing that pain from you. So they are super good. Subconsciously, without knowing it, they use the right technique. So we are selling all the time. So don't be ashamed to say that you are selling if you're a salesperson. And do it ethically, and life would be so nicer for everyone.
Right. There's always the thing that comes out when we talk about persuasion, or some people seeing it just as manipulation. And it's not untrue that it is, but I think it's just that word has such negative connotations for most people. They see manipulation as being a really negative thing, but everything we do in life, as you say, is pretty much there to either consciously or unconsciously manipulate people in our environment around us. We're always influencing other people. I think one of the things that I particularly think highlights this is even the energy that we show up in our daily lives is influencing the people around us. If we're grim and miserable, that's what we're putting out to them. So people are going to react or respond to us differently than if we're smiling and warm and welcoming. The way people respond around us and react is going to be very different. So that is influence, that is persuasion. You could even call it unconscious manipulation, unintentional even.
Yeah, when it's unintentional, I still think because it's unintentional, I would put it more into the ethical side because it's you. And people may react in one way or another, but you have to go with it, right? Because as you said, that's what you are projecting. That's the energy that you are giving people. So if they react badly, but subconsciously, that's what you want. And it's like when they sell, everything that happens to you is because of you. You're responsible of it. If people are a pain on the phone, But maybe you are a pain on the phone. Maybe you should think about that. If they are all grumpy around you, maybe, you're responsible for it. So I said the same thing to my son this morning, who said, yeah, everyone is complaining and so on. I said, well, if everyone is complaining and you're the only one in the middle, who do you think is the problem?
This is the thing. The stuff that triggers us, there's always something to learn from it. Otherwise, it wouldn't be triggering us.
Yeah. And then you have to pay attention to that. But as you are super self-centered, you don't care because you think you're right. No, what's very complex with our brain is that the thing that could save us from many bad decisions is our rational brain. And the more educated you are, the better the environment where you live you are, etc., the more efficient that rational brain is going to be. And it's called the neocortex, by the way. The only problem is that neocortex is 200 times slower than the primal brain, than the decision maker in the brain. And a very good example is when you have an argument with someone and you come out with the very well-known 2 words, in fact, yes, but. I'm sure you experience it. The moment you say, but, there is an alarm signal ringing in your, because yes, but comes out by the primal brain, and the rational brain says, don't say that, but it's too late, it's out, and you are in trouble. The yes, but is a good one. Everyone says it.
Yeah, and it is and it's come up before. I've heard that one before, and have consciously worked on switching the yes buts to yes ands, because of the way that the word but just negates some other stuff that's come before it. The yes and philosophy is one from improv, it allows people to throw the ball back. It keeps the communication going and doesn't negate the other person. But like you mentioned before, these things don't come so naturally to us. We do have to train ourselves into them. And so being a bit quieter, keeping our mouths shut when and really listening to people, that takes time. Even the sales techniques that do work, ethical sales techniques that do work and help people to get to a decision, take time to learn. What would be examples from what you teach of what actually does help to lead people ethically to the decision beyond listening well and not negating what they're saying?
Well, the very first thing you have to do is to get that brain in front of you to listen to you. And the easiest way to do that is to show to that brain that you know what triggers the decision. What triggers the decision is called a subconscious frustration. Very often in marketing or in sales, they talk about the pain. What are the pain points of the client? It's his business, it's his employees, it's the market. So those are rational pain points, but they don't trigger the decision. What triggers the decision is a set of subconscious frustrations. And if in the very first few words you use, you show to that brain that you know what the subconscious frustrations are, or what the highest subconscious frustration in relationship to what you are selling, of course, because we have thousands of subconscious frustrations, but you want the one that's connected to what you're doing. If you show to that brain in a very simple sentence that you know it, that brain is going to focus on you and it's going to want to listen to you. And because you are going to do your best to remove that subconscious frustration, that's the moment where you become ethical. Because you made the work to get a decision that works for you, but as it removes on their side that subconscious frustration, you are helping them. And that brain is going to love you. It takes more time. It doesn't cost you resources because the brain is going to go for it. I mainly never negotiate one of my prices. Because why would I? The price is the value of my service. But as my service removes the subconscious frustration, and it matches how all those things work, I don't deplete my resources. But it takes me more time because I have to study who I'm talking to. I have to understand who they are. I have to understand what subconscious frustrations are driving their decisions and how I can trigger this.
I do find I come across this, and I've experienced it myself to some degree, because I work a lot in the coaching and speaking world.
Yes.
A lot of people who are professional coaches, professional speakers, don't quite get that they actually need to be solving a problem. They maybe want to have a message out there, or they have this idea of this is what I want to present to the world, or this is how I want to help people. and aren't always clear on the problem that they're solving for other people. And you're talking about the frustration points and that you can charge what you do because you solve a frustration point for them. That's solving the problem. If you weren't solving a problem for them, the lever to make the purchase decision is going to be much more difficult.
Yeah, or you have to default to manipulation, coercion, influence, and all those things. And again, you will do sales. People have been selling with those techniques for ages. But what you catch are what I call the tire kickers. You don't get those who are going to build a relationship with you and be recurring customers. And very often it requires work. I'm sorry, there is no magic wand here or magic sauce secret. It requires work. It requires you to make the effort. We have reached a stage and a time where everyone thinks that you get everything in a click. I'm sorry, no. And they all run after those magic bullets. I'm coaching people. And the first thing we do is, let's stop with the magic bullets. Let's work. Let's focus on something where you can help someone. We can help to remove subconscious frustrations. Who is the person? Who is your ideal client? People don't even know sometimes who they want to sell to. Who's the ideal client? And once they know it, what's the subconscious frustration? Oh, but that's complex, Thomas. Yes, I know. Even the person doesn't know it. To help the audience maybe to better understand the subconscious frustration idea, and I'm a bad example because of my haircut, if you are selling a shampoo, for example, or a hair conditioner for men, let's say, so the rational way would be to say, okay, with that shampoo, hair conditioner, your hair is going to look blonder, smoother, and have that wave and style, and you will be very stylish. That's rational. Primal selling would be, what if you would be the only person people want to talk to? The one person who attracts everyone at the next party. In that sentence, I'm showing you your problem. Actually, no one wants to talk to you. And with my what if, I let you imagine how it's going to be. And it took me 1 second, not even 7 seconds. In that one sentence, I have touched your subconscious frustration. I have created the emotional variation.
Yeah.
And I've ruined your decision. And you are even going to think that I've solved the problem when I haven't solved anything yet.
Because
your
you've
primal brain is going to
identified
love
it.
me.
Yeah. Yeah, I've come across this with marketing before. If you can clearly identify a problem for people, then the assumption comes that, oh, you get that, you understand that, you must have the solution as well. You're automatically credited with that. We see everywhere now, AI is all over the place. And I think it's hard to even completely predict how much it's going to change things for us and the working environment stuff. But one thing that seems to come up again and again is that it's probably not really going to take away the areas where we still need to relate to other people, the human connection, that it's not, hopefully not at least, going to fully replace that. People who are doing coaching, consulting, the person-to-person stuff, there's the professional speaking, for example, where there's still very much a need for human presence and connection is going to be particularly essential. Where does any of this fit in with, because I know you have some background in AI as well, where do you feel that this maybe fits in with neuromarketing and ethical persuasion?
I think it's a fantastic tool to create content. But it's only a fantastic tool with what you expect from that tool. It's very funny because, yes, I have a PhD in artificial neural networks, which 30 years ago, when I was doing my PhD, we didn't even work. We refused to be called artificial intelligence because at that time, the expert systems were artificial intelligence. And we, the artificial neural network guys, that it was disgusting. So we didn't want to be called artificial intelligence. And nowadays, artificial neural networks are what's powering GPT and all those things. So you have to understand that artificial neural networks are learning models, in fact. They are made to learn. You give them an input, they come with an output. If there is a delta to the expected output, they correct themselves. And you can see it. If you insist with GPT, for example, when something is wrong and you keep insisting, it's diving deeper and deeper into the wrongness of the answers because it's learning wrongly. So you have to clean the slate and start again. So we can only get good things from AI if we teach it properly what we want. And you can see people who write good prompts They don't write one line. They write a full paragraph of instructions that are very precise because they know what they want. It's like people tell, yeah, but I'm going to design my website. You don't even know what you want to put on your website. Don't create a website if you don't know what comes in it. What's the purpose of it? I'm coaching clients and let's do, because you have to be very present on social networks, but don't post just to be there. You can do it to be seen, but you have to have a strategy behind everything you do. It has to go somewhere. It has to persuade someone. It has to drive them to the result you want while you help them at the same time. So AI will help, but I think it's very far from understanding human emotion. Even we humans don't know how emotions work. There are so many models on emotions. It's said at the moment that you experience per day between 20 to 40,000 emotional states in your brain. I think you were thinking, oh, I was happy this morning and I'm a bit sad this afternoon. You think I have 2 emotions today. No, you go through those emotional states all the time and predict that we can experiment up to 64,000 different emotions.
I can't imagine how anyone would have calculated that accurately.
No.
But we don't have conscious awareness of all that, as you say. But it's an interesting prospect. I'm certainly glad that AI isn't too much of a threat, but I do still think that it's a good thing to be leaning into the relationship side of things. What do you see as being like, is ethical persuasion still is it going to be more commonplace, do you think, in the future? Do you think more people are going to adopt this?
I would love to.
Where are we headed?
That's my work.
Yeah.
That's my work. No, I think the more we go into tools that take us away from our humanity, the more we are going to need this humanity. And the more we are going to need human relationships. That's how our species survive. Because we are a tribal species, because we stick together, we work together, we grow together. We all have different roles in the tribes we are in. So again, even Homo sapiens sapiens, who we are, science still doesn't know exactly why we are the one bipedal species that survived. Because there was Homo australopithecus, Homo oceanicus, etc. Homo sapiens comes from Africa. We had some other Homo europaensis in Europe. Why is Homo sapiens everywhere? Is it because we were the most invading evolution of the species? Or were we the one who could the most mingle with other species to the point we became the only bipedal species on Earth? We cannot live without human relationships. Look, during COVID, when we were in lockdown, I didn't experience it. Most people here in the south of France who are living in the gorgeous region, first of all, French don't listen, so we didn't give a shit. And we're living in a part of France where we are outdoors all the time. Even if we don't meet someone with our family and so on, we are outdoors, we enjoy it. But people in major big towns, big cities, were in lockdown in their apartments, and some went ballistic. And you can still see the aftermath of it. I talk to a lot of people, and they all say something changed. Talk with taxi drivers. They think people are more aggressive. Talk with people in supermarkets. People are more aggressive. In real estate, people are more aggressive. So because something switched a little bit because of that lockdown, of being removed from who we are. And that wasn't about ethical persuasion, because somehow we all knew we got played. So we're pissed.
But I do think there's, beyond making sales and making money, there is a bigger impact to be had with really listening to people and being present with them and paying attention. We are developing relationships and closeness and interaction. I'm someone, I work remotely. Maybe, I don't know how much of your work is remote, but I work remotely most of the time, apart from when I'm giving presentations. I do some in-person work with events and things, but most of it's remote. And sometimes I don't realize how much it affects me that I don't go out and meet people who are my peers or my friends as much as I would really like to. Last Friday, went and had lunch with a friend that hadn't done it for ages. And it's, oh my God, this is what I've been missing, needing that connection, needing that interaction from other people. But you're right, COVID really highlighted that for us. But I think I think this maybe we work as well is actually part of the repair work, the healing from that we start making things a bit better for people and connecting.
Just be human. The first thing is pay attention to other people. Well, it doesn't cost you anything to smile to someone. And look at how people are surprised when you smile at them. They either think that you are a nutcase, or they stop and they look at you and then they smile. And you can see it's made them feel good. In fact, that's my why. Because when I smile, even when I do it consciously, what I'm doing right now with the little wrinkles here and so on, because I do it consciously, my muscles moving, my primal brain thinks I'm smiling. So it gives me a reward. It gives me a shoot of endorphins. And because you saw me smile, you smile a little bit. But there is also a theory about mirror neurons, meaning that if I move my hand, if you see my hand move, you may not move your hand, but the neurons triggering the hand movement are currently triggered in your brain. So if I smile, your neurons connected to your smile are triggering. So you get a shoot of endorphin. So it's free drugs. So if I smile, you smile. If you smile, someone else smile. And we may make the world smile. And then our children have a better place. That's why I do what I do. I could do many things to get there. But I do that through keeping ethical persuasion, from my books, my trainings, workshops, coaching, and so on. So that's the idea. There's still a billion people on Earth, so there's still a little bit of work.
I love that. I love some mirror neurons. The fact that they can help with so many different aspects of like mental rehearsal and preparation as well for things, and for how you show up and how you feel on a day-to-day basis. Probably we'll have to do a complete episode at some point just on that one topic, because it is big in itself. This has really been a very fascinating conversation for me, and I'm really sure our listeners are going to enjoy this as well. And will maybe, like me, will want to know more, and maybe check how can they find out more about neuromarketing, Make Me Great, or all the other stuff that you do, the ethical persuasion. Where should people go to find out more about you?
They can find more on my website, which is happy-brains.com, or you have make-me-great.com. And if they want to connect, I'm easy to find on LinkedIn. I'm Thomas Trautmann from Happy Brains, and it's easy to see I'm the bald guy with the brain. So there are a few
the
Thomas
cool glasses. I'm a bit jealous of your glasses. They look much cooler than mine. I might have to invest in a flash pair like that. They look really cool.
I will tell you the name of the brand.
I appreciate that. I certainly will be checking out more of your content, and look forward to hearing more from you in the future on ethical persuasion and Happy Brains, the likes of Dr. Thomas Trautmann. It's been a real pleasure having you on Present Influence. Thank you.
Thank you. I enjoy your job. Thank you.
To sum up my thoughts on this, I've always thought that persuasion and influence should be taught and acted on within ethical frameworks, because otherwise we do become the con artists who are trying to trick people into doing what we want, or trying to negatively manipulate people in situations to our own ends and not for their greater outcomes. I think most of us are good people who want to do good things, and so we shouldn't be abusing the tools of influence and persuasion, but certainly they can be abused. And pretty much all of them as well. Not just Cialdini's 6 tools, although there are 7 now in the new updated version of his book, but also the tools of rhetoric can be abused. None of those things will leave us feeling good about ourselves, and probably not good about our results, because it's not all about the money. If all that matters to you in your life is money, then you are lacking some deeper meaning, and you're probably lacking a lot of love and close relationships. Success in life is success in all areas of life that you can have it, not just in one. And whilst money is important, it is not the only thing that gives you a rich life. So let's aim to be ethical and, as the Stoic philosophers would say, virtuous in our actions, that we act with good intent and goodwill for others, that we care for our fellow humans as best we can, and that we don't look to just fulfill our own needs. This may be beyond the messaging of this particular show, but this is my personal philosophy of that we can do a lot to help each other out just by how we show up in the world and how we act and interact with other people. That can teach other people, or at least show others, that there can be a better way of acting and behaving. Not that we should become doormats to be walked over, but that we should be kind in our actions, but firm as well with others, that we should have healthy boundaries with people. We should be unafraid to say no, unapologetic for being true to ourselves, and more besides. And if you've been listening to this show for a while, you'll know that these are important elements. On Friday, I'm going to be sharing with you something new. I'm going to be sharing with you a coaching call that I recorded with someone who is a listener to the show. And I am looking for more people who want to do this as well, because I do think it's going to give you great insights into things that are going to help you develop your communication skills, whether that's as a professional speaker and looking to do more keynotes, or whether you just want to improve your communication outright. If that's you and you would like to be improving your communication skills or stepping up your keynote, or maybe even adding a bit of humor into what you do, then get in touch. The coaching sessions themselves are going to be around 30 minutes. They are going to be free. The catch is that they will be published on the show. So other people will be able to watch and listen to your coaching sessions. They will not be private. If you do actually want private coaching calls, and that's something you'd like to speak to me about, those aren't free. But you can get in touch with me to find out more about what's on offer, or go and visit presentinfluence.com and take a look at the different coaching packages there. Before I go, so that's on Friday. Next week, I'll be speaking with mentalist Keith Kong, a really cool guy. And he was a winner of Penn and Teller's Fool Me show. If you've ever seen that, Penn and Teller are fantastic. Love them. If you've ever been to Vegas, you may have seen them as well. And they've certainly been on a lot of TV. He won that as basically kind of a magic or trick show. He's a professional mentalist. He's done shows mostly in the US, and he sat down to talk with me about mentalism, how to entertain as a mentalist, and some insights into how mentalism works and to how he can influence crowds and audiences from the stage. Really fascinating conversation, and Keith is such a nice guy, so I hope you'll come and join me for that next week. For now, wherever you're going, whatever you're doing, have an amazing rest of your day. See you next time.